and welcome to this edition of CIBER Focus. I'm Sara Reeves, and with me today is Alfredo Diaz, the Chief Financial Officer for First Data Corporation. He is here today as part of the first Kelley Latin American Conference. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So your career has actually been quite international. You were with Dell, specifically in Panama, and then now you're the CFO for a global payment processing company. Can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day and whether or not an executive in a global business is experiencing global issues on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting how different working for a big corporation is than working for small corporations. The good thing about working in Latin America is that, you get a feeling for both, right? While I was working at Dell, we used to say, well, you need to tropicalize Dell, right? You need to make Dell more local, right? And that is important. I mean, when you're doing business outside of the U.S., you definitely need to understand the local culture. You need to really get a feeling of how to do business in that area. For example, it's relationships. I mean, relationships in business are very important, but relationships in Latin America are super important because a lot of the companies are still family owned. I mean, while they, for example, take a big corporation like Copa Airlines, which is a huge airline, it's still basically family owned, right? You look at a big retailer like Falabella in Chile. It's big. It's a huge company. It's still family owned. So building those relationships, it's really important in order to be successful in doing business. And it's one of the first things you need to realize, right? And one of the challenges, coming from the U.S., coming from another culture, it presents a challenge, right? Because sometimes we're not used to that, getting familiar with the person that you're doing business with. We think it's all about just doing business, but when you're working outside of the U.S., you really need to pay attention to how do you do business in that particular environment, right? And sometimes we forget about that.
And is this something that is affecting you on a regular basis, that you're thinking about these sort of things strategically every day, or is it something that you've kind of grown accustomed to and it just seems natural?
You still have to think about it. I mean, it just happened to me, just yesterday. I mean, you set up a meeting and you figured out that, it's a Monday, it's 11 o'clock, everybody should be working, but then, well, no, it's an off day in some part of the world. For example, it's an off day in Argentina. It's a holiday. Well, if you didn't check that before and you set up a meeting for that day, you might upset somebody, right? Because you didn't know that was a holiday. I'm not going to be working that day, and it just happened to me actually 2 days ago, right? So I mean, those are the things that you really. I mean, nobody would, in their right mind, think about setting up a meeting on the 4th of July, right? Right. Because it's such a holiday in the U.S. So I'm not going to find anybody in the office. Right. So I mean, those things you really need to pay attention to, and sometimes we forget about that, right? We forget about that. We're not all alike. We don't have all the same schedule. We don't have the same holidays. And it's things like that you really need to pay attention to, because you might hurt somebody's feelings. You might damage a relationship by not paying attention to the small details.
Sounds to me like there needs to be a button on the calendar application that says these are the countries that I work with, and here are all the.
There should be. Outlook is pretty good about that, but sometimes you forget. Right?
Yeah.
You set up a meeting. You sometimes don't even know where that person is. You know you need that person, but you don't know if it's in Costa Rica or in Mexico, or maybe that person moved around. So there's some things that you definitely need to pay attention to.
Can you talk a little bit more about your experience working in Latin America, particularly things that you think stand out that someone who hasn't had the opportunity to work in the region may be interested in?
Like I said, our personal relations are really, really important. The other aspects is that, it's not. When you talk about Latin America, it's not as, well, no, you can say it's the same difference. I mean, if you talk about a person from the East Coast, might be different from a person on the West Coast. The same thing happens in Latin America. Just because, somebody's from Mexico doesn't mean it's going to be, it's going to be the same person in Panama or in Costa Rica or Argentina or Chile or Uruguay. I I mean, every little country has their own idiosyncrasies, their own culture, their own particular way they like to do business. So you really need to pay attention to stuff like that. I mean, again, it's very, very, very important when you're in Latin America to really know the culture. I mean, for example, if you go to a lunch meeting, right, in the U.S., it's just it's lunch. You have lunch, you finish lunch, you pay the bill, and that's about it, right? If you go to a lunch meeting in Latin America can last up to 2-3 hours. I mean, there's small talk after lunch. There might be drinks after lunch. I mean, those are things that you don't see, in the U.S. or you see less of it in the U.S. And you really need to be conscious of that, right? It's that personal relationships in Latin America are probably a little bit more. I don't want to say they're a little bit more important, but they're important, right? A person doing business, a business owner, especially if that business owner is, it doesn't have any partners. He's the business owner, right? He really needs to trust you before he does business with you, right? And that's not because you're part of a big corporation, and you might be working for Procter & Gamble or First Data, like I work. He needs to really get to know you first before he trusts his business, because that's in the end, that's his baby, right? So.
Are there things or strategies that you use to prepare yourself to work in different environments?
Yeah, I mean, you really need to do the work ahead. I mean, you really need to know, who. For example, in my line of business, we deal with a lot of banks. You really need to know, well, who am I dealing with? I mean, is this the founder? Is this the owner? Where's his background? What has he done? Does he has other business, other interests? You really need to do your homework beforehand.
Yeah.
In order to be successful. Another thing is that education in Latin America sometimes I would say it's not that it's not good. It's good, but it is different, right? So people are motivated by different things. A lot of people are we don't see that in the U.S. anymore, where you stay with one company for 20, 25 years.
Right.
We still see that in Latin America. We still. I mean, I have an employee that's been with us for I think he just turned 30 years. He's been with the company for 30 years over different iterations, but he's been with one company for 30 years. You don't see that anymore in the U.S. We still see that in Latin America. People want that consistency, that that feeling of I know today I go to work and this is my work and this is I don't want to say that they're not ambitious, because they are, but they want security. They want to they're motivated by those things, right?
Is there also a sense of loyalty to the institution?
There is a lot. I mean, people are very, very, very loyal to their company. In the same regards, now, when a country starts growing fast, and we're seeing that in Panama, we see that in Chile, we see that in other parts of Latin America, you get that turnaround pretty fast, meaning that, yes, I'm loyal, but I have somebody, I mean, I can tell you in Panama, for example, the employment rate, it's at, unemployment rate is at 4%. It's pretty much almost full employment.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of competition for good talent. And then while somebody might be loyal, if somebody's offering, 40, 50% raise, we're seeing that now happen quite a bit. It's happening a little bit more and more. Whether that's good or bad, we can debate that, but we see that, and that has become a new challenge that we have to work with. Yeah.
How are you addressing that?
It depends. I mean, it really depends. I mean, as a manager, as a leader of people, you need to I read an article a couple days ago saying, well, you need to know when you need to let somebody go. Sometimes the best opportunity is not, it's not within your company, not at this time, right? You hope that they get experience, and that at some point they come back, and then you get to garnish that experience. But it actually, same thing happened to me a couple of days ago. I mean, I have a very, very good employee, a very, very good collaborator that was working with me, and he got offered a great position. And I as a leader, I could have said, yeah, I want to retain you, but I knew in my heart that he needed that experience, and I couldn't give it to him. I just couldn't. So as a leader, you need to understand that sometimes you need to, for the benefit of that particular person, you need to let somebody go. And
Speaking of experience, and you're wanting to have people as a leader who have experiences, how important is it to you that your employees have experience in other countries outside of their own?
It's becoming more and more ideal. I don't think in Latin America we've done a very good job of providing those experiences. I know in the U.S. The larger corporations are doing that more and more. Sending people abroad, rotating people. We haven't done that as much in Latin America, and that is a challenge that we need to overcome. I mean, we need to provide those experiences. We need to, send people to other countries. We need to, let people see other areas. Even within the same country, but other areas. We don't do that enough. I mean, even us that we are, we're part of a larger corporation. We don't do that enough. I think that's important. At the end of the day, you get bogged down by the things that you do, day to day. We need to get this done, right? And then we don't provide enough time to develop our people. But we definitely need to do a better job of that.
Switching just a little bit. So your company, you're the chief financial officer of a company whose main thing that they do is related to finances. How is payment processing and just things related to financial management when you're on a global scale? What does that mean? What sort of challenges is this bringing to you?
My company, the company that I work for, and this is interesting because, I work for basically two bosses, right? Because my company is a regional company. It's a company in Central America, and we're owned by First Data, who is our owner and our provider. Because First Data provides services to us. And on the other side, I'm owned by a bank who is our customer. So one of my owners is my provider, and one of my owners is one of my customers. So that provides, it's very, very, very interesting. That dynamic of that company is very interesting. So you get to see both sides, right? You get to see, what are the things that we're doing internally to provide better services for our customers, and our customers are mainly banks or large institutions, large retailers that need electronic processing. I mean, they need to make sure that money goes from point A to point B in a secure way, and that whenever that money needs to return as a form of payment, that payment is also secure. And the industry it's undergoing a lot of changes, especially in security. We're right now in a big transformation, going from the regular, credit cards that you still have today to one that is more secure with the chip, and then at some point in the near future we'll probably go to a contactless, which you see some of it still in the U.S., but it's still not overly used, and we're seeing that. We're also seeing small retailers that need. With the iPads and with the iPhones and all this technology that we have now, a small retailer can now have a solution in payments that they didn't have, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a really complex environment. You're just bringing up the whole iPad, making somebody able to take payment, basically anywhere they are, which is a whole new thing into the market. But is being able to make all of these things secure and tracking them on such a large scale a challenge?
It is a challenge. I mean, we have to invest in secure communications, in making sure that our processes are as transparent, as secure as possible. That how do we, from the time that a customer goes into a bank and requests a credit card or a debit card or whatever form of payment, electronic payment he wants to use, that his information is secure all the way up to issuing that credit card. I mean, it's I can tell you that right now we have invested, I don't know, about a year and a half trying to make the change into a more secure way of issuing that credit card, and and it's a lot of money, and that's just us, that we're a small outfit in Central America, but all over First Data they're doing the same thing, and all our competitors are doing the same thing. So we're going to see an evolution in electronic payment over the next couple of years that is very, very interesting.
And you said most of your customers are banks. I think that a lot of people would think a bank is a bank regardless of where you are. Do you see differences among your bank customers across countries?
Yeah, I mean, a bank in Curacao or Barbados, they cater to a different type of client that a bank in Costa Rica or Panama would. I mean, it depends, I mean, it depends on, and even banks within the same country, they're a bank that it's more upscale, that caters to a different type of customer, a bank that is more, a bank for everybody. I mean, you see that all, I mean, and they offer different products. You see that all the time. I mean, they're not, you might think that they're the same and they want the same products, but it's not. They don't see themselves that way, and it's good, because it's a relationship with your bank that you're going to have for a long time, right? Because that's where you get your money. And that's where, that's how you pay your bills. That's how you buy a house, you get your mortgage. So and we see that difference. I mean, we have I can't even say how many different products that we offer for just one credit card. There's platinum and signature and loyalty points and deferred payment and installments and SMS, short messages, send an email when a transaction goes. I mean, there's so many things that a bank will ask for that another one will say, well, no, that's not for me. I don't see the value in that.
Interesting. This is slightly switching track here. I'm curious, do you have advice that you would offer businesses in the U.S. who are interested in doing business in Central or Latin America?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, there's a lot of growth in Latin America. There's a lot of things that we don't have or that we don't know that we have. I mean, so there's opportunity there. I mean, Latin America is probably the only, or is the only region in the Americas that is growing right now. I mean, Chile is growing at, not double digits, but they were growing double digits a couple of years ago. Argentina, with all their problems, are still growing. Panama is growing. Guatemala is growing. Costa Rica is growing. So Mexico still, while Mexico behaves a little bit more than the U.S., they're still growing. So I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. And as the region becomes more stable, because that's only happened within the last 20 years, there's a lot more opportunities. So I mean, you really need to know, what can you add to the table? What can you bring? At the same time, Latin America continues to be a little close, right? We're still, in Latin America, again, we're still family owned. A lot of companies are family owned. They're very well guarded. They try. They're more close. The networks are a little bit more close. So you need to do your work in order to penetrate that culture. I mean, you really need to do the work beforehand in order to, because it's not a lot about what you know. It's who you know and how do you show them that you know what that you know. Right? How do they trust you? It doesn't, not just because you're Dell or First Data or Bank of America or whatever big corporations coming to Latin America. Well, no, what can how do I know that I can trust you as a person and you as a business leader?
So it's important for a business owner to think more just about their individual person that they're sending out, as not just about who they are and how they operate.
They need to. I mean, culture is. I mean, it's very important. I mean, the cultural differences in Latin America are very, very important. We're still, we're still an emerging market, right? Yeah. So we still have things to do that we need to deal with that are different. And we need to understand those differences. And the differences are not. It sounds kind of weird for me to say the differences are not the same, right? Because it's not the same Panama and Costa Rica. I mean, there's still differences that you need to understand. And you say, well, no, you can't say, well, I've done business in Panama, so I can do business in Costa Rica. Well, no, there's some differences that you need to understand before before you can do business.
It's very common for people to talk about, Africa is not a country. They'll refer to all of Africa.
Right.
But I realize we do the same sort of thing by referring to Latin America as this one homogenous
and we do
entity.
And you know what? We do the same thing in the U.S., right? We say the United States, but Florida's not the same as California. California is not the same as Boston, as Massachusetts, or New York. I mean, they're really differences. You need to really understand those differences if you want to do business in Latin America.
So I'm curious
Yes.
how you got to be you.
How do I got to be me?
So
What does that mean?
when you left undergraduate,
Right.
did you think that this is where you would be now?
No.
And tell us maybe a little bit about your career path then.
No. So, no. When I was younger, so I was really into cars. I wanted to be an engineer, and I wanted to build engines, and I wanted to do, all this cool stuff. I guess I didn't. So I got to study mechanical engineering, which it's what I like. It's what I like at the time. But over time, I really understood that what I really liked was was dealing with people. I mean, I really like looking into a problem, find a solution between in a collaborative environment, and that's when and I really understood that, or I really got to know that once I opened my own business, and it was related to cars. I had my own kind of garage repair shop, and I really I got to see that what I really wanted to do was study business. So when the opportunity presented itself, that's when I decided to get my MBA.
Yeah, and you're one of our MBAs.
That's right.
We always like to-
And it's great. Actually, Kelley has been. The experience at IU at Kelley, was incredible. I mean, I've made very good friends when I was here, and we still keep in touch. And what I learn here, I use it every day. I mean, it's amazing. You don't. Phrases that you heard, advice that you got from professors or from peers. I mean, it still resonates true to this day.
Do you consider, though, that your mechanical engineering background is valuable in that if you had 2 business degrees, you might not have the same kind of experience that you have?
I say it was valuable to me. I think it helped me be a little bit more process oriented. I think it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever experience you have, I mean, it's going to help you. I mean, it shapes your personality, right? All the experience that you have over your life shapes your personality. So, it doesn't matter whether you're an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. At the end, you're gonna get a lot out of that, and that you can use once you get an MBA. So, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the MBA, right? That you can actually bring people from different backgrounds together that want to do business, that want to be in the business world, and they want to understand business, and then make it work, right?
Do you have advice for students who are currently business students who are thinking, I would like to work on an international scale?
At the end of the day, I mean, you need to show who you are. You need to demonstrate that you can be a star. That you can work harder and smarter. Than anybody else. I mean, at the end, sometimes there's going to be out there. There's going to be smarter people than you. There's going to be people that work harder than you. That's going to happen. But if you do both at the same time, you're going to win, right? Because when people are smarter, you work harder, and when the person in front of you or you're competing against, is working harder, well, you're going to be smarter. So, I mean, and at the end of the day, you need to be your own person. I mean, you need to be real. You can't fake it. I mean, you can't fake it out there in the world. I mean, you need to be, you need to be a leader.
Yeah. Right.
You need to worry about people, about the people that you work with. You need to be genuine. You need to be, again, you need to be real. I mean, you need to be your own person.
These are things that are tricky to practice in front of the mirror or get a degree in.
But you know what? I mean, it's going to help you, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna simplify your life, right? It's a lot easier, to be who you are and use your skills and find that thing that you can do well, that you enjoy, and that you want to do for the rest of your life, whatever that is. If it doesn't matter, at the end of the day, if work feels like work, you don't want to do it. It's difficult, right? And we're all looking for that. Sometimes we find it, sometimes we don't. It's like family, the same thing. Sometimes you're gonna be happy, sometimes you're gonna be sad, and sometimes you're gonna cry, sometimes you're gonna laugh. But it's what makes life interesting.
Excellent. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to share with our audience that you think would be relevant?
I think that you need to make your time here at Kelley special, because this is a special place, And you need to do the best that you can, every day. I mean, that's the only way you're going to succeed in life. Try to do the best that you can, and you not be afraid of making mistakes. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's we all making mistakes is the only way you're going to learn. You don't learn without making mistakes. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Be yourself, and work hard. At the end, that's the path to be successful.
Some excellent advice. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us today to share your advice with us as well.
Thank you.
And good luck for the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. That's it for this edition of CIBER Focus. If you have any comments or suggestions for future topics, you can reach us at ciber@indiana.edu. Thank you. Excellent.